bit.
Yes.
Okay.
And on top of everything, the city decided that today would be the best day to cut down a tree that's causing a problem in our
Right.
front yard. So apologies for any background noise you guys hear, but
Probably dog barking.
but thanks for joining us. It's Chris and Lisa from Been There, Got Out.
Yes.
And
we help people suffering in and struggling to get out of relationships with toxic people find the strength they need to get their sanity back and then some. All right, so today's our Q&A, and we got some. Oh, see, he shut the window. You need this dark. It's like a man cave in here.
it looks better on the camera.
I know. Okay. All right. So we got a few questions, and you know how chatty we always get. So we'll see if we can keep it to half an hour or less.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll read the first question.
Yeah, let's
because
have it.
because he's going to do more of the answer. Okay. So what do narcissists not understand about their partners?
Oh, so much, right? But you know, I think the biggest thing, and this is really core to what NPD involves, and that is that you know, that their partners are actually like separate human beings that are they're equal to them, you know, and they're not objects or possessions that, you know, can be manipulated and used to enhance the narcissist's self-esteem. You know, I exist, and you know, you and I are in a relationship. You know, I feel you're as important as a human being as I am. Narcissists don't think that way. They think that they're the center of the universe, and everyone else, like lucky enough to be in their orbit, is just revolving around them. And it's actually a great metaphor, because when my relationship was ending, my ex, and apologies to any, I always call her by a different name. I don't want to use the real name. So I'm going to pick on Lucy today.
Yeah.
But so apologies to anyone out there whose name is Lucy. But, you know, she said to me, you know, just days after leaving, she said, when you fall off planet Lucy, who knows where you land? And at the time, you know, that was devastating to me. Like, you know, oh my God, I've been ejected from her world, and she's the center of the universe, and I'm not part of it anymore. How is my life going to go on? And now I look at it like, you know, yeah, you're right, Planet Lucy. You're out there in outer space while the rest of us are here on Earth. So you love that one.
I know.
That quote.
I
That's
know. It's like, what kind of person even says such a thing?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we know.
Yeah, we know. We know.
You know the answer to that.
Yeah. So my response to this question is like a shorter form. Like, they don't understand that you actually matter at all, because they don't see you. I mean, remember, narcissist has the emotional maturity of a toddler. Toddlers don't think about anyone else's feelings. They just think about their own needs and desires, and that's what a narcissist is too. The other thing that I was thinking about is that they think that things will stay the same. They don't seem to understand that a power dynamic can shift within the relationship, because they're so used to having all the power and control. And I think that when the other person, when a narcissist partner starts becoming enlightened, or getting, God forbid, some support elsewhere, or even recognition, it makes them very uncomfortable, and they feel threatened. And I know in my own experience, the narcissist I was once married to was pretty shocked when I stopped just believing everything he said and going along with his choices. I think one mistake they fail to recognize is that you have the ability to make choices too, because when you're under their spell, you're just convinced that whatever they say is right. So it's pretty interesting, as they, you know, for those of us who are able to start waking up and getting out, to see what happens to their facade as they learn that you are a person.
Right, and that absolutely, towards the end of my relationship, I was standing up for myself more. I mean, I was still very broken. I was, you know, a shell of my former self, but I just had this little, you know, it's like the end of like a gladiator movie, you know, when the guy looks like he's dead and he goes like, and just starts to reach the hand up,
Yep.
you know, and you know, he's still alive. That was me at the end of the relationship. And I started to stand up for myself, and boy, did that meet with just anger.
Oh yeah.
And what a response that got.
Yeah. Yeah. How dare you?
Yeah, exactly.
That's not your role.
Exactly.
Your role is to obey me.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So
I'm going to ask you the next question.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I hope I have an answer.
Okay. What are some of the examples that your NPD, narcissistic personality disorder person, has done to discard you for their new supply?
Okay, so so I didn't know anything about narcissism until maybe 6 to 8 months. Well, it was after we met, so it was like 9 months after I was discarded, and so there were things I picked up later. I'll get into in a second, but I think the first sign of a discard, looking back, that was like really apparent was we had, in the middle years of our marriage, we had settled into this routine where she had some obligations in the evening, like going to school. She was taking classes, and she was also a musician, and she met with her various groups that she performed with. And she would come home, and I'd have dinner ready, and we would sit down and like eat and watch TV together. And this was a routine, we have kids, so after the kids, they were young at the time, would go to sleep. And it became like a really nice part of the routine that I looked forward to. And as time went on, she would come home, and instead of, I would have dinner ready, sometimes nice, sometimes frozen pizza. And she would just eat real fast, not watch TV with me, and say, I'm tired, and go upstairs. And I would come upstairs sometimes like 3 or 4 hours later, and she'd still be up in bed on her laptop, on Facebook, on other social media. I don't want to get into too much detail, but it was like the first discard. My first obvious discard was for this online, like, stroking of her ego. Like, she fancied herself, oh, I have so many. She really cared about how many friends she had on Facebook, how many followers on this platform or that. And look how funny I am, look how popular I am, everybody loves me, online.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing I saw. But then in the wake of her leaving, I was like, oh, I'm facing this like really nasty legal battle. And I started digging in. One of the things I looked at, we shared a cell phone account, and I had never looked at her records before, because like I wasn't naively, I wasn't suspicious of anything.
Well, most people aren't suspicious of
Right,
partners. They're just in the relationship.
Yeah. But I found these records going back many months, almost a year before our split, where she was talking to this one cell phone number at every hour of the day, sometimes 8 to 10 times a day, either calling or taking calls from this number. Sometimes the calls last an hour or more. And I was like, what was going on? And I figured out who it was, and it was a male who I didn't know well, but I knew, was kind of she brought into our family as a teacher of something to our kids. And I was like, oh my God. And it was the first, now my guard was up, right? So it was the first sign of what I ended up finding out was a lot of cheating. So that was the real discard. I just didn't see it first. That happened first, but or about the same time maybe. And subsequently I figured out she was cheating all throughout the marriage.
Actually, as you're talking, I'm thinking, I did a whole blog on the discard.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and there's a number of red flags in the person's behavior which signal that something is going to change. So as you were talking about a discard, I mean, my relationship ended a bit differently, but he did do a number of things which show that he was going to discard maybe. Let's see. The one pivotal moment was he started saying, this was like at least 2 years before we actually left, was that he was unhappy in the relationship. It like came out of nowhere. This has happened like once or twice, and we were together for 20 years. But he just suddenly was unhappy, and that if I didn't start doing, let's see, I think I had a deadline. I think I had 2 or 3 weeks. If I didn't do exactly what he wanted sexually, then he was going to start flirting. So that was sort of like, wait, what? And then, of course, he had already been having an affair at that point. And then I learned later he had had affairs throughout the marriage. Another thing he started doing was he started criticizing the way that I looked, which he hadn't done for a lot of the relationship. But he was like, you know what? You should like cut your hair really short and dye it platinum blonde. And I was just like, oh, he was like, yeah, that might look good on you because, you're getting old. This was like a while, 10 years ago, something like that, almost 10 years ago. And I just thought, where is that coming from? But of course, there are all kinds of signs about the same thing about affairs. Another thing he did was he started projecting a lot of stuff on me. He told me that that I needed to start relaxing more, and that I seemed depressed, and that I should start drinking like a huge glass of wine with him every night. I'm not really a drinker. I'm really into fitness and that kind of thing, and I use my calories on ice cream instead of alcohol. But he was like, you need to relax. Like, you seem like something's wrong, and you have to like start drinking alcohol. But there were a lot of things like that hinted that there was a discard. Of course, things changed, and that's like a whole other story for a whole other segment. I'll just say. Yeah. But there were little signs. Oh, by the way, the other thing that's a common thing that a lot of them do is he started exercising a lot and getting in shape, which he really hadn't cared about at all. That's a common thing that they do before discard, is they're trying to get ready for their new supply, try and look as good as possible.
Right. And really a lot of times they need that new supply to be in place, right? Because they don't want to be alone, right? So they've decided they're going to move on. It's kind of a chicken or the egg. I was answering a question about this on Quora the other day, where it's like a chicken or the egg thing, where, do they get new supply because they know they're going to discard you, or do they discard you because they got new supply? I think
they always have supply.
They do, but do they find the new supply, and then with that in place, they said, "Oh, I can now get rid of that other person."
Yeah.
Or do they say, "I really want to get rid of that other person.
No,
Let me go find supply."
I think they want supply. They always are on the hunt.
They're always looking,
for
right?
supply. So there's always supply in place. They don't just say, "I'm getting tired of you." I mean, they're always tired of you as soon as the supply shifts, because you're the main supply. Then they need more supply. It's just. You can't keep up.
And in case anybody watching this doesn't know what we mean by supply, supply is, a term in the narcissism world where it's someone who the narcissist can kind of suck energy from, right? Can be used to feed their ego,
right.
to support their self-esteem, make them look good in the community, or just prop them up.
Anything that gives them admiration and attention.
Right.
That's like probably the basic way to say it.
So I feel like reading a question.
Okay, but this is two. We got two questions that we tried to combine.
But my answer is going to be relatively short because
you're just going to go into mine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we kind of joined these two. So the first one was, why are narcissists highly status conscious? And the second one that Lisa got over on Instagram, which is, why does a narcissist spend so much money?
Yeah.
Because they're kind of intertwined.
Sort of.
And I was going to say, I was answering the first one about being status conscious, and it touches on what I said a moment ago. So, at its core, narcissism involves an inability to regulate one's self-esteem. So a lot of times, it's more complicated than this, but people will say narcissists have a fragile ego. So there's a working, way to describe it that works pretty well. So anything that supports a narcissist's self-esteem is going to be attractive to him or her, whether it's a high-paying or powerful or influential job, an influential role in the community, a partner who reflects well on him or her, or really anything else that does the job. And I've got the stupidest example, and this goes back. This is like a segue, right, of spending money and self-esteem.
Yeah.
Or status rather. Throughout our marriage, my ex had a really premium vacuum cleaner. It was an Electrolux vacuum
cleaner.
cleaner.
A great object in the Hoover.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's actually not a Hoover, but boy, oh boy, it's close.
Yeah.
But it was fine. There was nothing wrong with this vacuum cleaner. But if you don't know about Electrolux vacuum cleaners, they're enormously expensive. Their segment in the market is this like premium. This is the best.
They are not sponsoring us.
No, well, I'm about to rip it. Not really. I mean, like I said, there was nothing wrong with the vacuum cleaner. It was as fine as any vacuum cleaner I've ever had in my life.
Uh-huh. Right. I don't know if I've heard the word fine in vacuum cleaner used, but okay.
But and they would call the local Electrolux shop. It's totally different than any other brand of vacuum cleaner. They would call and say, it's due for service, like a car. I was like, all right. So I brought this thing in for service one time, and the bill came to, I wish we had a drum roll. Maybe I'll put one in the audio. It came to $800.
To service your vacuum?
Just to service this like 20-year-old vacuum cleaner. And then of course she took the vacuum cleaner when she left, thank goodness. But I bought like some Shark or something that was like $200 to buy, and it does, I can't tell the difference. It does every bit as good a job, you know?
Yeah.
But it was the brand and the status, like, of having an you have an Electrolux. Like, who would ever look in our utility closet to find the vacuum cleaner? But so
Yeah. Yeah.
but so yes, and that's my answer to both: status conscious
Yes.
and
So why do they
and
spend so
why
much
they
money?
spend so much money?
Status. Well, that's one thing. So, but the money thing was like a much bigger question, and we put it on our Instagram feed to see what people said, and hardly anyone said the thing that I was thinking for the reason why, but a lot of it is status. But some of the answers that we got are from someone. She said, "Well, the money isn't morally there." So again, anything that they think doesn't belong to them, they'll still spend it because they don't care. They'll take what's yours. Another person said that he had her pay the bills while he hoarded his money. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly, and you know, I felt that really strongly. And I think you said that. And so many people that we've talked to, same thing, where they'll say, well, this is my, you know, like even if you're in a marriage with kids, everything else, they'll say, well, yeah, but this is still mine. Okay, and so this person also said what was mine was his, and he had to supervise our finances. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go a little into what she said and then describe my situation. She said he was totally hiding assets, claiming I was spending too much while he bought himself whatever he wanted. And then the assets were in his name and the debts were in mine. All of this, as I read this comment, I was just like, this was my life for the entire time. My ex-husband owned some real estate. He always kept it separate. It was like, you know, we rented for years and years, even after we had kids. And then one day I was like, maybe we should try and get a house. And he's like, oh, we don't have money for that. But there was always money, you know, in his name, and him and his, I won't say which family member, but they own all these properties together. And it's just like everything he wanted was his money. But then when I wanted something, you know, that was also his money. It's like I never had anything that was just mine. Another person said that her ex would leave his bills unopened until she had no choice but to look up a debt management company, and then he paid the bare minimum. Same. And I said on our feed, there seems to be a narcissistic trait where they don't open their mail. They don't open their bills. They're like really bad with, and this goes into the next question, which I'll wait on for now. But there's a lot of avoidance going on. Somebody said, my ex spent so much money and tried to make me pay some of the debt during the divorce, some of which was there before we met. Again, no sense of consequences. You know, in my situation, my ex wouldn't open there would be late fees, interest fees. He'd open all kinds of different credit cards, forget which ones were where, and it was just so much money. And we had mostly combined bank accounts, except for the ones I didn't know about. And it was like, I was like, you know, bleeding money all the time, being like, why are we wasting so much? And yet he wouldn't let me take over the bill management, because, you know, that was his, you know, he had a system and he did it right. And it just made me crazy. Mm. Another person, okay, so now we're moving into the thing with status. So another person said, my ex seems to do it, spending a lot of money, in an attempt to show off. My daughters regularly whine about not having any food in the house, but he's co-signing for a car loan for a friend, helping out other people. And also he has to have the newest electronics, Alexa pods all over the house, no less than 3 TVs that are all 43 inches and more bigger, trading in his car every couple of years. Same thing. You know, where they always want the newest and the greatest for themselves, but then you want something, no, there's no money for that.
How indulgent of you.
I know, that's right.
Yeah, we had, you know, I want to interject one here that just, it's, you know, you know, one of these things. My grandmother died about 6 months before my marriage broke up. Mm-hmm. And so I got a modest inheritance from that, and she was like, you're going to use it for this, and this, and one of them was to pay off an $8,000 credit card bill that she had run up.
Yeah.
And I agreed to do that. Mm-hmm. And there was no, you know, legal, there's nothing I could do
Right, right,
to recover that. But meanwhile, I took of the however much was left, which was a lot more. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was like I think 40,000 in total. I spent $300 on an electric guitar, and she
Out of all
went
that?
off. Yeah.
Wow.
She went off.
And it was yours.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
yours.
I mean, in marriage, it's
Well,
fair
yeah,
to
but-
consider it a
Right,
you
right,
know,
but-
that's totally fair.
Right, right. But,
But-
the inheritance from one of your relatives, you think you'd get more than
Yeah, can I
$300.
take $300 to
Yeah, and
just a little indulgence?
not get chastised for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing that I was thinking, and I know I see we're getting, as usual, low on time, was why they spend so much money. This first came out as why they spend so much money on their children. And I think that, and we talked about this with a friend of ours yesterday in real life who also was married to a narcissist for decades. And the thing that we were thinking is, it's to appear as the good, generous parent. So a lot of narcissistic parents will spend loads of money on their kids because they want their kids to think of them as the better parent, the more generous parent. They'll buy them cars, they'll buy them boats, tons of toys. I'm sure many of you are really familiar with this, especially with younger kids, where they seem like they're the more fun parent. So money is used in a lot of that in terms of just manipulating people, but especially their children.
Right.
Go ahead.
I want to go back just a little bit to when you were talking about the assets are mine, the debts are yours.
Right.
And it makes me think about my house.
Yeah.
And during the marriage, there was a point where I lived in this house before we got married, and I'm in New York. So legally, the way that is viewed is the asset was mine, the premarital. In Connecticut, where you are, if that had been the case, once you get married,
Yeah.
it all goes in a pool. So,
Yeah.
thank goodness I live, just these few miles away.
I know.
But there was a point where she was saying, we have to put the house in joint title. And I would have. I had the papers all it needed was signatures.
Yeah.
And then she rethought about it, and maybe she was contemplating leaving at that time. If so, she hadn't talked to a lawyer. But she said, "Oh, I don't want to be associated with the debt because I have a mortgage on the house."
Right. The debts are
So,
just yours.
The debts are just mine. That's what made her decide not to take joint ownership of the house. She didn't
Yeah.
want to share the debt.
Yep.
So thank God.
Yeah. Right.
because of that little twist of fate, if you will, I'm still here
I know.
because I
Luckily.
would never have been able to afford to, pay for half of the house.
Yeah.
We would have, like in most divorces, right? The house is sold.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to skip that question because we're getting really low on time, and
Okay.
I want to take the one that I promised would get done. With
Okay.
This one. Okay. So we got one just this morning. It's long form, so I'm going to read it out, and of course, not say who you are. But the question is, when will the narcissist leave me alone? He discarded me 6 months ago like trash after begging him to come home. I was awakened and left him 2.5 months later. Oh, jeez. Okay.
How unprofessional.
I know, and it's from a professional organizer. Okay. I was awakened and left him 2.5 months later. I filed for divorce after he kept screaming that he was done with me. He was never going to file. He has run away from being served, and now he continues doing covert things to hurt me. Recently, he hacked into my personal email and deleted evidence that I have of the physical abuse and the proof of him soliciting prostitutes for sex, and he is a police officer. I filed or I'm going to fill in protective order, because his behavior is alarming and I can't test him. I have been no contact since I quietly moved out almost 4 months ago. He and his family are blocked. We had to publish the divorce in the paper, and I'm assuming that's to let him know because he's avoided you. Why won't he stop? Why, let's see, what does he want? We have no kids together, no assets, no strings attached. We dated for a month and were married for 5 months, and he will just not take the divorce and move on and get back to his secret life. Why? Ooh, I did a ding at the same time. Why? That is such a great question, and that is something that I could relate to. Different details, but very, very similar. With my ex, I mentioned a little bit earlier in this call how he started like the discard process and it switched. And it sounds like that happened with you too. You said he discarded you, and then you got back together, and then you woke up, and then you decided to finally file for divorce. So my first answer as to why he's doing this is because narcissists fear abandonment more than anything. And a divorce is abandonment. It doesn't matter if he's initiating it or if you're initiating it. It's that there's still going to be an end. And the other thing is that with a divorce and with a separation, what's happening with your situation is that he's losing control of the relationship. He's not in charge. He doesn't have power over you anymore. And that is killing him. And like we said also earlier in this call, they avoid a lot of things. This is what I noted before. So he's trying to, run away from the responsibility that the fact that you actually want to leave him. It's going to be over. He doesn't want to deal with that. So that's my basic response to why. And then the other thing with him not leaving you alone, I'm not sure if he is doing what's called hoovering you, which we mentioned with the vacuum cleaner, which is a common manipulation tactic that narcissists use to try to suck you back into the relationship. But either way, whether he's doing it or not, remember, for them, the main thing that they want is your attention. So it doesn't matter if it's positive, like loving attention, or hatred and anger. He wants you to keep paying attention to him. And the fact that you have to keep chasing after him with the paper, legal things, it's like, it's showing that he still matters because you need something to him.
Yeah, jump through this hoop. Come on, jump through this one.
Yeah, let me keep making it harder for you.
Right.
But then you still have to keep chasing me, because once you stop, if you could just walk away without the divorce, he's meaningless. He won't have anyone paying attention to him.
And that happened in my situation in a big way. I mean, my relationship was a lot longer. Yes, there were assets. Yes, there were kids. The marriage was a lot longer. And when she left, she just filed for custody of the kids. Now, I don't want to get into details why. I think I know why. Right. It's a whole long thing. But she just filed for custody, and I kept saying to my lawyer, like, why aren't we getting divorced? Why is this just a custody case? And you and I were already dating, and you're like, when the relationship was
years,
new, the relationship is new, and you're saying, like, why haven't you filed for divorce? And I finally woke up and I told my lawyer, like, yes, let's file for divorce. I'm not staying married to this person.
Yeah.
Which that would have been like fine for her, like to be separated.
And you'd been separated for such a long time.
Yeah. It was at least a year. It was a year or more.
So what happened when you filed?
And so I filed for divorce, and she went nuts.
Yep.
At one point she said, he's suing me. I mean, technically you do, you're the plaintiff when you file.
But you had been separated for so long. It was like you already
over
were.
A year,
yeah.
And she went off, in, in social media, and she went off, like, at the time I hadn't gone no contact yet. She was going off on me. I mean, it made her go crazy.
Yeah. So it's the same, in essence, the same kind of thing. It's that abandonment, that's what really gets them. Okay, so now we have gone to half an hour.
Yeah, so